I go home to visit my family, but all of them have started moving down here. So there's very few left.
Yeah.
My mom moved down here in the middle of the pandemic, 72 years old.
Yeah.
I told my brother, she's your problem, man. You're going to be there forever.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the pandemic, she surprises me.
Yeah.
And moves down, and now she lives in the apartment on our property. And now the joke is kind of on me and how that worked out. So.
Well, yeah, it's nice to have the family close. My parents did the same. Like right when my son was born.
Yeah.
They've been threatening to move down here for like years and years.
Yeah.
And then my son was born, and their house went on the market real quick.
Yeah.
That expedited the whole process.
I'll tell you, man, grandparents are game changers. Like, I don't know how people without like systems and support do it. And my wife's parents are like, we joke they love him more than we do, because they will take him anywhere, anytime. We take him to a derby party 2 weeks ago. He's on the boat with them.
That's so cool.
And it's a game changer for us to be able to have
Definitely is.
support and time.
And you know they're with like family, someone you trust. You know?
Yeah. I'm like, just drive the boat slow. Yeah. Don't go crazy.
So Steve, thanks for joining me on the podcast today. I'd like to talk about NourishNC and everything that you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I told you earlier, but congratulations on the under 40 nomination and the CEA award. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Why don't we start with, what is NourishNC and what is the mission and the vision of the organization?
Yeah, so NourishNC, we're a local nonprofit here in New Hanover County, and our mission is to provide nutritious food to hungry or food insecure kids right here in New Hanover County. In a nutshell, that means we want to put good food in their bellies so they can succeed in the classroom and thrive in their community. We want to just help build happier, healthier children in this community.
Heck yeah! I mean, what an important part of our nonprofit community, and I mean, to that population of people to help is super important.
Yeah, helping kids is pretty widely supported.
Yeah, exactly.
Generally speaking.
Yeah. So what's the history of the organization? How did it get started, and when did it get started?
Very organically, circa 2008, some concerned parents out of Carolina Beach Elementary School just heard kids were struggling with hunger over the weekend, not really eating. We call it food insecurity. You don't have reliable access to food. And they just started packing what they called backpacks, weekend food bags. Mm-hmm. So they started putting 10 or 15 of those together. It's got 8 meals, 7 snacks, and putting them in the kids' backpacks. And going back to the idea that supporting kids is generally accepted, the idea just kind of blew up.
Yeah.
And from those 10 kids we were serving at Carolina Beach Elementary School on the backpack program in 2008, fast forward till today, we're in 36 pre-K through 5 schools, and it serves about 1,350 children. So it was really organic growth. Someone saw a problem, said let's do something about that, did a little research, talked to the school, partnered with them, and the rest is kind of history, as they say. In 2009, we officially became a nonprofit, and it's just been a roller coaster ride ever since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And is it only in New Hanover County, or do you go to Independer or?
Yeah, so we are
Brunswick
mission bound to only serving children and families in New Hanover County.
Okay.
And I could see us in the future expanding to counties in between here and 95. What you find is it's easier to raise funds in Wilmington, right? We have a metropolitan base, we have wealth here. The more rural you get, the harder it is to kind of support your community, because you need wealth to draw from to put it back into the community, to invest it back, right? So we'd love to see our model out in the more rural areas in between here and 95.
Yeah. So from 15 backpacks in 2008, did you say?
Yeah.
To 1,300 kids now. How is the organization, what does the organization look like now? Like, how many staff do you have? How many volunteers do you have? How do you make it work?
It's a lot different. When I started, I'm coming up on 10 years with NourishNC in about a month and a half. And when I started, we were tiny, this kind of rundown building over on the south side. And at that time, we were feeding 250 kids in the backpack program. Mm-hmm. And we've been very blessed that this community has just supported us, and we've grown. But that requires all the things, just like your business, right? As you scaled up, it requires attracting and retaining good people, technology, investment, facilities. And we've been, again, very fortunate that when we put the call out, hey, NourishNC needs X, this community time and again has responded. We built a $2.1 million facility on Market Street. If you've been here long enough, it's the old China King buffet. And we had never raised that kind of money before. We're a pretty small nonprofit. And in the middle of COVID, this community helped fund that building and helped us expand and offer more programs. And so it's been a long, wild ride, but it's always, I joke, we're on like a reality television show where we'll speak something out in the boardroom, and tomorrow someone walks in and meets that need for us. So it's very interesting.
I've had the opportunity to go to your guys' newest location. I think like a year or two ago, I think there was a chamber sponsored event there maybe, and we got to pack some backpacks, and I think it was around like Thanksgiving or Christmas time maybe, or something like that.
Yeah. We really want our place to be a great place for all of our stakeholders. So people who come and volunteer, have a good, fun, fulfilling experience, but also for our families and kids who come in. We don't want them to walk into NourishNC and conceive of it as charity. So it's specifically designed to feel like a grocery store. We have a free grocery store called the Market on Market.
That's
funky music playing, bright, colorful, really, really clean, friendly, engaging volunteers. And so we kind of say, we have a saying, it's always tour time. Meaning, imagine your biggest investor coming through and you kind of make everything look extra nice, right? Shove everything in a closet. We kind of wanted that philosophy, but all the time. So anytime someone walks in, they walk out of there going, wow, that was an amazing experience, you know?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So again, and now with the growth, so it started with the backpack program. How many other different programs or different things do you guys have going on? Yeah,
so the backpack program works really well for pre-K through 5 kids. They get this bag, it gets delivered to school, gets dropped in their backpack while no one's looking, and they have meals over the weekend. Our kids love it, especially when they're younger. They're open about it, they ask about it. In 5th grade, if you remember, or when your kid gets there, kids would rather die than anyone know they're on a food support program, right? So to fix that in middle and high school, we invented the Market on Market. So it's just a free grocery store where children and their families come and shop and choose what's best for them. So non-perishable items, produce, milk, dairy, eggs, tons of fresh veggies. And rather than us packing a box of food and handing it to them, you get to choose what you want and what's appropriate for your culture, your diet. And now that serves 2,350 children here in New Hanover County between the ages of birth and 12th grade. And you know, we kept going from that. So next was, well, we're on Market Street right here, but hunger is out here. And we know where it is. It's not a mystery where hunger lives in this community. So we invented a mobile market. We call it the Mobile Mom. And it's a 35-foot long truck with shelves built into the side of it and produce racks. And we drive that out into the community where kids need us most and set it up. And the idea, again, is for it not to feel like charity. So we're typically at an after-school program or a clinic, and there just happens to be this really cool, funky grocery store in the parking lot, blasting James Brown, with very friendly people at it. So again, it's not something you want to be embarrassed to be seen in front of. It just happens to be in front of my kids' after-school center, right? And so that just launched about 2 years ago with support from the endowment here, and it's just been wildly successful, and our families love it, and our kids love it, and so it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, you know, what you guys are doing is like a perfect fit for what the endowment is, you know, has been created for, and to help support and go in the future.
I think the endowment's been very good in NourishNC, and I think the endowment has the potential to be so create radical change in this community. When you're talking about putting north of $50 million investment into this community, arguably in perpetuity, right? Like, what can this community look like? What is housing, education, homelessness, healthcare? Like, what with sustained investment, you can create real change.
Absolutely.
You know, and
sustainable change.
We often struggle with these kind of 1-year grants. Oh, you got to do it all over again. Well, how do you attack some of these really complex problems with 1 year of funding and then expect to deliver these huge results in 1 year? It just doesn't really work that way.
And the funders hate to cover the salaries and like the costs that you need to run the organization. I shouldn't say they hate. It's just it's harder to find that type of funding, right?
So you're preaching to the choir. We call that the overhead myth. And it started, probably 20, 30 years ago. But this idea was you shouldn't spend money. You shouldn't have overhead. You shouldn't spend money on people and infrastructure. And you tell that to any business person,
Yeah.
and they're going to say you're insane, right? Why would you not want to invest in technology and good people? But for some reason, when we're tackling some of these harder problems, we should spend no money.
Yep.
And that leads to underinvestment in our organization and arguably less results, you know?
Yep.
So should we be spending a ton of money on overhead? No, it should be reasonable. But we need to attract and retain good people, and I need good technology, I need good equipment.
Yep.
And so part of that, I think, on our end is having honest conversations when those funders come forward and say we won't fund those things. Okay, but I still need paper. I still need people to run the programs. I generally find when you explain it to someone, they go, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, I think, is on us to have that harder conversation when someone says, I only want it to go here.
Yep.
I only want it to go to food. Okay, so how do I get a forklift to get it off the truck?
Yeah.
How do I get it on the shelf? How do I get it in the box? Like, how do I fund those things, right? And 9 times out of 10, I find folks get it.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about this with Andy Jones of NC. We were talking about, just the dynamics and the difficulties in running a nonprofit is, and then when you get the money, like the reporting requirements that you have to those institutions is so much more difficult than most, privately owned companies. Yeah.
Right?
And then then you need the overhead to then report, where the funds are being used. It's just
And we joke too. Then we spend $16,000 on an audit to prove our overhead is low, and that goes to our overhead. So we're finally breaking out of it. Funders are getting it.
Yeah.
It's still very prevalent on on social media. You'll see it when the holiday season comes around.
Yep.
Oh, the Red Cross CEO makes too much money, or whoever.
Yeah.
And listen, they might, but this person's in charge of our country's national blood supply. It's a pretty big job.
Right.
Do you want that going to the lowest paid position?
Exactly.
I can't. And if so, what is your threshold for what they should make?
Right.
You know, again, should we have limits? Of course, but how do you get the best people? It's not by saying I'll give you the lowest salary.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
and I mean, the fulfillment and with your team and helping people, that only goes so far, right?
Yeah.
They still got to provide for their family.
Yeah.
They still got to make their ends meet. So it's like doing good doesn't go all the way.
Yeah, we say passion doesn't pay the bills, right?
I like that.
And what it leads to, and this is pretty endemic in our sector, is because we're still suffering from the underinvestment, that we underpay our folks and we burn them out. And so it's a revolving door because we can't compete with the other sectors. We're forcing them to work too much. And again, how are we going to solve these problems if we're doing that to our folks?
And that creates more cost. Turnover
is
a huge hidden cost in any organization.
Yeah. And even when I first took the job at NourishNC, we didn't have healthcare. And we were underpaying everyone, in my opinion. And how can we expect these folks to take care of their community if they can't take care of themselves, right? And it didn't happen overnight, but slowly we started adding more benefits and saying, let's take care of our folks rather than beating on them, so to speak. I come from food and beverage.
Yeah.
I worked in hotels and country clubs, and that's the mantra in that business, right? If you're not working 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And sometimes in CPAs too, right?
Man, I think everybody should have to work in the service industry, like restaurant, hotel, hospitality. You learn a lot of life skills, and you just learn a lot.
Yeah. And I learned there are times you got to grind. There's no way around that. You got to put the hours in. You got to do it.
And that's part of the learning, right?
Yeah.
You got to.
But now for me, it's also okay. But also know there's times I got to leave at 5. I have a 3-year-old now. I want to be home with my family. My staff and my team deserves to be at home with their family.
Yep.
When you get the chance, take it and go home. And, be with your family.
So how'd you get into working with NourishNC in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, so I was in hotel and country club management for most of my accidental career. Just kind of got promoted and golden handcuffs to some degree. And I was approaching 40 years old. And I remember sitting at my desk one day going, God, what am I doing here? I just pulling every day and kind of sighed real heavily and didn't love what I was doing. And on that day, I had done 10 years at this particular place. And I said, you know what, I'm done. Walked down the hall, quit. Didn't have a child yet, so I could do this.
Right.
And I quit sight unseen without another job. And of course, my mother was like, you quit without having another job? That's crazy. And the universe worked out for me that NourishNC posted a job description for Executive Director. And it's one of those interviews where you feel like you're just like cranking home runs, like
Yeah,
boom,
yeah,
boom. You
yeah.
know, I literally danced out to my car, like, man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And before I got home, they called me and said, "We think you're the one." And I said, "Man, I know I'm the one. Let's go."
That's awesome.
And I'm very fortunate that coming up on 10 years later, I love going to work, which is like not what I could say in my past life, right?
Yeah.
Which is to some degree is the dream, right? Like, love going to work. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, it definitely makes the day much better when you get to go and feel fulfillment and enjoyment out of what you're doing.
Yeah. I'd always volunteered a lot and served on boards, and they kind of say like, do what you do on the weekends is the job, and
Right.
I kind of was fortunate enough to find that in NourishNC. So.
And you're a UNCW alumni.
Yeah,
you
three-time
said.
alumni. Yeah.
Awesome. What did you study at UNCW?
So I did my political science as an undergrad.
Okay.
Then I did my fun graduate degree, which was liberal studies.
Okay.
And then I did my I need a job degree, which was public administration.
Got it.
With a concentration in nonprofit management.
Oh,
So
okay. So that's like
Yeah.
very much aligned with
Yeah.
what you're doing now.
I was there. I was a lifelong student there for a while, about 10 years at UNCW. So, but I loved it. I loved every minute of being a student there. So if I could go back again, I probably would.
Yeah, I'm a UNCW alumni and very, very partial to had a very good experience there.
Yeah.
So how do you qualify for the programs at NourishNC? Is there like a application, a process? You have to meet certain thresholds, or?
Yeah. So really, for us, it's pretty simple. We would try to make it as we call it low barrier.
Yeah.
Don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get help. So we have about 100 partners. Those are schools, clinics, other nonprofits, government agencies. If they see or hear something that indicates a family and children are experiencing food insecurity, they enroll them or they refer them. We don't do any financial information. We don't do any documentation of citizenship. If one of our partners, who I call boots on the ground,
Right.
it's a school nurse, it's a teacher, it's a social worker, if they say this kid needs it, we believe them. I have a warehouse full of food. Let's get it out to those kids. So our only requirement really is, are you a child in New Hanover County?
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so tell me what is food insecurity? What is that?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So in a nutshell, it's kind of, do you have reliable, consistent access to nutritious and affordable food to live a healthy and active lifestyle? Yep. And for some folks, it's not just about, some neighborhoods are food deserts, we call them, meaning there's no grocery store within a certain radius.
Right.
For some folks, it just means the cupboards are empty. Some folks have very high food insecurity, or low food insecurity, I should say, meaning the cupboards are empty all the time. Other folks are cyclical. Hey, we got paid today. I'm good to go. I don't need NourishNC right now. We'll come back in a month or two.
Right.
That's kind of changing a little bit to more nutritional security. So if you think about historic food banks, you think about canned goods, right? Like, here you go, we'll just give you a bunch of canned goods. Now you have all the food in the world.
Yeah.
But you have kidney beans, and maybe you got some chickpeas and a 3-bean salad. That's not going to build a happy, healthy kid, right? Mm-hmm. So now the focus really is nutrition security. Are we getting you the right amount of good food?
Exactly.
To make sure you're fighting disease and just going to live a healthier, more active lifestyle. So produce and fresh fruits and that kind of thing have become the kind of focus in our sector.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes complete sense. Because, if you're just eating Doritos or, I don't know, Fritos or whatever it is, it's food, but it's not actually like giving you the nutrition that you need.
Yeah. And if you think about food deserts, what often is a staple of those, there might be like a gas station.
Yeah, like a convenience
store.
So
you're eating out of a gas station, which is typically going to carry really things high in fat, salt, and sugar. Yep. And they're going to be cheap, but kind of expensive too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if I buy a can of ravioli at Harris Teeter, it might be 69 cents. It's probably $1.69 at the gas station in the food desert.
Exactly.
So you're probably going to go with the chips because it's a more economically sound choice, right? So you want to increase access through a number of ways, not just handing out food, but do you have somewhere in your neighborhood you can walk to to buy good stuff?
So if I understand correctly, when kids are in school, the schools are providing them with lunches during the day. Do they get breakfast?
Some schools do. So some schools are all free lunch. Some schools have free breakfast. They're called, we call them CEP schools. Community eligibility provision. It means everyone in school gets free lunch.
Got it.
And there's a good number of those in this county. that's on the chopping block last I saw in the budget. So we would no longer have free schools in New Hanover County if that passes, where everyone gets free lunch.
Got it. Okay.
So we'll see if that changes. But
yeah,
and that goes back to the backpack program. We kind of knew kids were eating in school Monday through Friday.
Right.
So it was kind of designed as what we call the food bridge.
Yep.
Friday when the bell rings until Monday morning,
Yeah.
let's get you food. So when you show up to school Monday morning, you're happy, you're healthy, and you're ready.
Ready to learn.
Yeah, right. Because
Right.
I'm a grown man, and my wife has to carry granola bars in her purse for me because I get hangry, right? And I immediately turn into a jerk.
Yeah.
And that kind of physical thing, it makes it hard to concentrate, right? And I'm an adult who knows better. What about a kindergartner who doesn't really know what's going on? Or a teacher who thinks that's a bad kid in that chair. And it's not. It's a hungry kid who hasn't eaten all weekend long. So the idea was to get them to school Monday morning so they could learn and be happier and healthier.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic to think that, a kid goes home on Friday afternoon and like literally might not eat or very, very scarcely eat anything until they go back to school on Monday. And
I'll tell you, that's probably one of the greatest misconceptions of child hunger is that people don't even believe it exists.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, this is America. It's North Carolina, we're fine. And I'm here to tell you after 10 years in the sector, it's here. It's real. In this community, it's about 1 in 6 kids struggle with food insecurity throughout the year.
It's crazy.
And that's roughly 6,000 or 7,000 kids in the community. So some folks don't believe it, but I have 10 years experience saying that it is very, very real.
Yeah, and I mean, how do you're talking about the carrying granola bars around and stuff. I mean, it's sad that we joke about that, but like it's reality. Like, we same thing with us but I mean, imagine a kid that's, going through their most important stages of development, not getting the nutrition that they need. I mean, I would imagine creates like, implications way down the road just from a development.
100%. So children raised in food insecure homes are going to be sick more often and slower to recover. They're going to have lower math and reading scores.
Yep.
They're going to be absent and tardy more from school because of that sickness, right? And so the long-term results are clear. If you're raised in a food insecure home, you're going to be a lot better off in terms of health, math, reading scores, and then behavior issues like we talked about. And then too, there's kind of the indignity of food insecurity. And so I grew up in a food insecure home with a single mom. Okay. And I have distinct memories of my dad pieced out, my mom had hurt her back. And I remember several things about being a food insecure kid. We didn't have that term back then. You were just hungry. But I remember showing the bright red card for free lunch. This is like in the 80s, so I had a laminated card that I had to pull out in front of everybody in the lunch line, right? So everybody in line knew I was that kid. I remember a very well-meaning church van pulling into my apartment complex. And on the side it said, "Feeding the hungry." And I looked out the window and said, "Oh man, that's for us." Ran downstairs, "Mom, don't open the door, don't open the door." And she didn't, and because we were embarrassed, the neighbors would know. Ironically, all the neighbors were in the same boat, so it was, but that church was well-meaning. Right. But like labeled us with this huge billboard pulling in,
That's so true.
And that's not, the sector's gotten a lot better.
Right.
But there's often times when getting help, sometimes it's still not the best help. It doesn't make you feel great when you're receiving it, So at NourishNC, I take into account how those moments felt for me. Yeah. And how our families feel when they walk through the door, what they see, what they hear, how they're greeted. Is the volunteer friendly and engaging, but not overly so? And just what does it look like, feel like? Does it feel like charity? Or can I bring my kid here and it feels just like a cool, different looking grocery store, So we try to design our services around that idea a little bit.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story, personal story.
Yeah.
I'm just, kind of connecting the dots now. I mean, that doing what you're doing now, creates a whole nother level of how you're connected with the work that you're doing. Yeah,
it's kind of an interesting circle to go from that kid to the guy who's helping. I mean, I get to go to work every day and feed kids. I think that's what got me my wife. She's like, "What do you do?" When we first met, I was like, "Oh, I feed kids." That's a pretty good line. So
I mean, that's above the puppy and
Well, it's funny you say that. So at the time, I was on the board of a no-kill dog shelter, and I fed kids, and I have a dog in a wheelchair. So I was just like, gotcha. And now, so anyway, years later, we laugh about that.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So tell me about what your plans are for the organization, and over the next 5-10 years, like what do you see NourishNC being in the longer run?
Yeah, every day I want us to be better at what we do. That's really my goal. Every single day, let's get better at something. If that's training for us to make us better, if it's better product, better services. I'd love to see us just keep giving better food, better services in more places in improved ways. So if that's expanding the market, if that's expanding the mobile mom, just getting out to where hunger is, meeting it where it is, and doing it in a very dignified, excellent manner. I tell my wife, she's like, don't you love that you go to work and feed kids? And I was like, I do, but I love going and doing a kick-ass job of it.
Right.
And that's just a little bit more important to me. And so I want us to be really good at what we do, listen to our families, listen to what they want, listen to what they need, and do that really well. Now, of course, in the short term, it's we got to get through the pending social safety cuts that might be coming. And so I started thinking in 18-month increments a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
I like to dream 5 and 10 years down the line, don't get me wrong, but because here we have hurricanes and COVID, and it's been an interesting ride. So, but I think for us, it's keep growing to meet the need, and ideally one day put ourselves out of business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a great thing.
Yeah.
A great thing. So how do you measure success of the organization? Like a for-profit entity, you're looking at profit, revenue, all sorts of financial metrics, maybe some operational metrics.
Yeah.
What are like the KPIs that you guys look at as an organization to say, hey, we're being successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. We obviously have our kind of outputs that organizations like us always count on. How many meals are you putting out? How many families are you feeding? How many kids?
Right.
But I really like our survey data where we're asking our children and families, our families, hey, is your child more food insecure? Do you feel that you're eating a more healthy diet now? Are you, these kind of questions that get to like, are we changing how you actually are? Because I can give you a meal, but are we making it better? Are you getting healthier? Are you more food insecure? We have a really cool thing called a veggie meter. Okay. You put your finger in it and it reads your carotenoids. And it can tell essentially how many fruits and vegetables you take in. So we can take your veggie score, and it might be 300. If we can continue to give you more produce, more fresh fruits and vegetables, it could be 500 in a few months. We want to see that number go up. And a lot of it, honestly, this isn't a KPI, so to speak. It's listening to our families. Mm-hmm. Hey, my husband got hurt on a job. We have one-income family now. Y'all saved us when the cupboards were empty. I had a family email me yesterday that a house fire, nowhere to live. They need food right away. We can do a box when you're living in a campground or a car or a hotel room that we can get you food right away. And over 10 years, I can tell you hundreds of stories of families who needed help, and we're very anti-bureaucratic. So if you show up and you need food, here you go. We have it. Like, let's get it in your hands. And so, lost my train of thought there, but.
No, that's great. I mean, we were talking about, how do you measure success? And you've got some KPIs, but at the end of the day, the feedback, the voice of the customer and is always going to be one of the best. I'll
tell you, years ago, I had a mom come in who didn't speak English. She had her kindergartner with her. And I didn't have Google Translate at the time, and we're struggling. The kindergartner is kind of translating. And finally I figure out mom is escaping domestic violence, which I hear way too often in our business. It's mom is fleeing domestic violence in a new home, but the shelves are empty. So, I load her cart with boxes of food. I go in the cooler, come back with produce and veggies and meat and eggs, and she literally breaks down crying, wraps me in like the longest hug I swear to God I've ever had, and we kind of part ways. And later on that day, she texts our phone, and it's a picture of, I'll call her Rachel, of Rachel sitting in this, what's obviously a new apartment kitchen. The walls are blank, it's like a wood table, and this kid's got a heaping pile of food that we just gave her that morning with this like smile on her face, And I think about things like that. That's not a KPI. I can't measure that.
No,
But now in between all those things are a lot of hard work to make those moments happen. But like we have a lot of stories like that.
Yeah. And I mean, those are the types of stories that we need to get out there, because, when it comes to trying to get funding, they're, in applying for grants, it's hard, and they want to see like data, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, like watch this video or something,
And we try to do both, right? We'll survey our school social workers. Is the program effective? How is it effective? What changes do you see? So for us, it's a good mix of storytelling and then data to kind of back up the storytelling too, and kind of knowing your audience. Some folks work really well with the story. Others want to hear the cold hard numbers, and making sure to kind of have both.
You got to have both. Definitely. So how does like the marketing that you guys do like align with, like, I guess tell me about your marketing strategy, and tell me about that.
So, Heather's our development communications director, does an awesome job on social media and email and all that. I find, might not be a strategy, but I will tell you what I think works really well for us. It's mine and Heather's job to go out and tell you we're awesome and that we do great work. And you may or may not listen to us because that's what we're paid to do. But if you come into our warehouse, either as a client or a volunteer or a donor, and hang out and see it, I want you to go home when you leave a volunteer event and go, man, they were organized, we did good work, we're feeding 1,000 kids this weekend. Because if you tell your neighbor believes you, right? Or if you're sitting in church with somebody or your friend or family member. So we want folks who experience, they're our loudest megaphone possible. We want them to go out in the community and be like, wow, I was at NourishNC today. It was just awesome. And again, that's not a strategy, but it is in the sense we cultivate it when you're in our facility, right?
I'd say it's a strategy.
Yeah.
Everything you said with me resonates so much, because what we try to do here at Component Associates is our best marketing is doing the best job that we can do for our clients.
Yeah.
Because exactly like you said, they go and tell other people, and like letting your work product and your professionalism and your process do the talking for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely part of the strategy, and it makes complete sense.
I'll tell you one of the moments that comes to mind when we talk about this is after Florence hit. We were never in disaster relief before, but our warehouse was battered and leaky, but we had about $70,000 in food. And so at the time, my program director said, well, what do we do now? And I said, I think we're in disaster relief, let's go. And we just started getting food out to kids everywhere. And so the one day I go to the P.O. box at the time, and there's a stack of envelopes in there this high. And I'm like, that's weird, So I look at them, it's Texas, Indiana, California, New York, and I'm kind of baffled as to why we're getting, and I opened the first one, and the thing was from California. Hey, my sister's a teacher there and says you guys are doing awesome work.
No way.
The next one is like, my brother lives there and said I should be donating to y'all. And I get goosebumps when I tell the story.
I'm sitting here like...
And we ended up getting donations from 26 states and Germany. We're a tiny little nonprofit in this corner of North Carolina, right? And what that said to me was people trust us. Yep. And while the money inside those envelopes was wildly important, the trust that those people showed by recommending us is way more valuable and will lead, I think, to long-term investment in NourishNC. So it kind of goes back to like, please, people, let's give them a good experience, and they go out and tell folks, and they do our marketing for us, I guess.
It's the cheapest form of marketing too.
Yeah.
You don't. It's just.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Talk to me about your supply chain. How do you guys procure the food? Do you buy it? Is it donated? Is it a mixture?
So it's finally getting better. The COVID days were very difficult in supply chain, but it's finally kind of returned to normal for us. We buy about 75% of our food.
Okay.
25% of it's donated, and we're buying from the big chains you would recognize that restaurants buy from, your U.S. Foods. We buy from national suppliers.
Yep.
We get a lot of donated food, so the community donates about $250,000 in food a year to us. Yep. But we have to sort through that. So we don't serve expired food, we don't serve junk food, we don't serve dented food.
Right.
So we kind of say, if you wouldn't give it to your kid, don't give it to ours. Right? I can get into that later on. But so we have a distribution and logistics manager whose job it is to find good food at the best price. and he's constantly out there shopping different vendors trying to get that. And then we have very specific needs, and just because you see it in the grocery store doesn't mean we can buy it.
Okay.
And buy at scale, you know. So it's challenging. We're too big for the small guys and too small for the big guys.
Right.
So I can't buy a truckload of peanut butter, you know, where you get a really great price. And
Yep.
so we're in that weird middle ground where we're struggling, but it gets better every day.
Yeah. So then the fund, so 75% of the food you purchase is through, you know, is just, you know, business to business kind of like procurement process.
Yeah.
So then talk to me about the funding that you guys get. We've got, you know, we already talked about the, you know, the endowment here. I'm sure there's, you know, the private funding, you know, donations. Is there any federal, state, like local, like New Hanover County, City of Wilmington? Talk to me about your funding sources.
Yeah, so we don't take any federal or state dollars.
Okay.
We do get money from the City of Wilmington and New Hanover County, thankfully. And we mentioned the endowment, but honestly, the majority of NourishNC's funding comes from people and businesses here in New Hanover County.
Cool.
And that kind of goes back to that trust thing, right?
Yeah.
But also, and you mentioned this earlier, if I can maybe hang out with you for a little bit and you get a $10,000 donation, or go fill out a 55-page grant application where I got to juggle fireballs every 2 minutes, I'd rather hang out with you, you know? And so we're very fortunate that people and businesses really, we don't exist without people and businesses in NourishNC, in Hanover County, both as funders and as volunteers. Yep. So again, I think that we do feed kids, makes it a little easier, you know? Yeah, it's people and businesses here.
So what kind of spurred like a lot of this conversation coming together is we went to it was like a soft opening of the K38 down in the proximity in Carolina Beach. Yeah. And I was invited, you know, we were invited. I didn't even know it was a NourishNC sponsor. And so we're there having fun, and then Ben David got up and gave his spiel. And I remember the statistic. He was talking about 1 in 6. Yeah. And basically what he said, he's like, whatever you're thinking of donating, multiply it by 6.
Ben is awesome, man. He always does a great job, and I love that he made it ask like that.
No, he did.
I need to take a cue from him. Yeah.
No, it was powerful. I mean, literally, like, you know, when I was filling out my sheet, I was like, all right, like, you know, and so no, that was. So I'd imagine you guys there's, you know, quite a few events like that you guys do as well throughout the community and throughout the year.
And those are our favorite kind, right? So a great example of how businesses can kind of give back, right? Cape Fear Commercial was a part of that. K38's doing a grand opening. Let's have our grand opening and have it benefit somebody else. Yeah. We love those kind of events because we have very little work to do and we get a lot of return, right? We don't want to do these events where we got to spend tons of money and time with an unknown or very little return. So them doing that for us, very little investment from us, which is great. We can concentrate on doing what we do, and we get a nice check at the end from those folks. So those are dreams for us, and we love businesses that are like, we're going to do 99% of the work. If you can help us out with a few logistical things, great. Yeah. And we get a check and we go feed kids with that. Like that's awesome. My favorite kind of event.
Yep, that is a high ROI activity right there.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes we get asked, I joke that like there's a lot of blogs out there that must tell people like, go partner with a nonprofit as your business and help them grow your brand. And that's great. We can create a win-win situation. Right. But occasionally I'll get a whiff of, I don't know that you're actually interested in a win-win. You're trying to use our brand to benefit your brand. And that's not what we're looking for. And we try to, I think a lesson I learned in this business is know when to say no. Yeah. You know, and if it doesn't, just because it might bring $1 doesn't mean it's worth that $1. And so, but 9 times out of 10, it's very authentic and folks want to help. But every once in a while, I'll get that feeling of like,
I'm sure you can sniff that out
100%,
quickly now.
100%, you know. And we ultimately will say, hey, we can't commit the amount of resources you're asking us to do the event, great, but we just can't do at the level you're asking us to commit to your event.
What's like your favorite event that you guys do every year? Or do you have like...
So we avoid our own events like the plague. We do one a year, and I love it. It's fun. We have a band play. It's great, and we have it in our warehouse, so folks get to come and see it. Yeah. You know, But a lot of times events for nonprofits are very high investment, especially if you put staff time into the P&L, and not always a great return. And they take a lot of time. So we do one really big one a year. We have this awesome guy, Jeff from Design Perfection, donates all these flowers, does this crazy stuff for us, and it costs us very little. We have a great ROI. It's like, we have a 17% cost on the event, and we bring in a ton of money. And most importantly, maybe folks like you come and get a table and bring 7 of your friends.
Yeah.
Don't know anything about NourishNC, get some drinks and dinner, but we get them in the room.
Yep.
And if we can get you in the room, 9 times out of 10, you're in. Yep. You might not make a donation that day, but maybe you will long term, and you'll get involved, you're volunteer. So we love our strategy is get you in the building.
Yep.
Let me give you a tour, come to the event.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm happy. One event a year is
good
great.
Enough.
Yeah.
Well, like you said at the beginning, I mean, it's kind of hard to not get behind and support the mission and the cause, of what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And it's like you guys got a good product to sell. I mean, not that you're selling, but this is what we're doing. It's hard for people not to support that.
Yeah. Yeah. At the very least, I very rarely get someone who's wants to argue about feeding our kids. It happens, believe it or not.
How? Give me an example.
So 9 times out of 10, it's blaming the parents. Where are the parents? There's this kind of, And 10 years ago when I took this job, my answer was the same. Hey, Chris, I'm not here to judge the parents. I'm here to feed kids.
I'm just here to.
After 10 years of doing this, now I'll go right into I'll share 10 stories in the last 10 weeks. House fire, medical care issues, homelessness, blah, blah, go on and on and on and on.
Right.
And that's what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing this kind of, I don't hear or see this, people are taking advantage of the system. And I find most of our folks are single parents, a lot of single moms. So that's one income home, taking care of a child. We have a lot of grandparents taking care of kids. These are people who are often the working poor. And this idea that they're somehow taking advantage of us or the system, in my 10 years, I don't find that has played out at all.
Yeah. And it's not the kid's fault.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of whether.
Yeah, even if it's the worst parent in the universe, we're still giving the kid food, and they deserve food, right? And it's food. I'm not giving away Cadillacs, right?
Exactly.
When you're mad, I'm giving them food. Listen, if you're going to hustle me out of food, you probably need the food if you're willing to hustle me out of some food, right?
Exactly.
So I just don't worry about it, but we find folks do. And so, then I always have this, I have too many stories to prove them wrong.
Yeah. What would you say, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your day-to-day or within, you guys just executing your work?
Yeah, right now we're obviously looking at cuts in the federal budget. We're looking at maybe $300 billion cut to SNAP, that used to be called food stamps, supplemental nutrition assistance, and Medicaid. $700 billion cut to Medicaid. If those go through, hunger is going to skyrocket. And NourishNC is going to need to respond to that, which we've been preparing for years. So we're always looking at things like that. While we don't receive federal funds, we will certainly receive the results of cuts in federal funding, and it will hurt children and families here. Two, we kind of talked about the overhead myth earlier, but what comes to mind is we have this saying in our sector called "when helping hurts." And it's when folks mean to do a good thing, but they don't really do a lot of research, and it ends up hurting an organization. Now, Nourish doesn't experience it a lot. We're pretty good at telling people what we want and what we need. So oftentimes that could be here, I just dropped off 400 pounds of 10-year-old expired food.
Yeah.
And now we have to sort it, throw it out, donate it. They're causing us work, right? And that's a small example. But, where was it? I think it was Sandy Hook, after the shooting at Sandy Hook years ago. People started mailing teddy bears to Sandy Hook. I don't know why it started, but they ended up having 65,000 teddy bears mailed to Sandy Hook. So in the middle of this tragedy in this community, and who's going to be mad at you for mailing a teddy bear, right? It doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Right.
But now this community that is already struggling has to find someone to manage 65,000 teddy bears. They had to get an 80,000 square foot warehouse to put the teddy bears in. And then what do you do with 65,000 teddy bears? If you throw them out, people are going to be upset, right? So then they had to then donate all of those teddy bears back out. Yeah. So it was this idea that probably on social media sounded really nice and fluffy.
Right.
But no one realized how much harm they were actually causing the community on the other end of that. And it doesn't happen to us a lot, but sector-wide, always happens after disasters. People mail clothes. People don't often need clothes right after disasters. Organizations need money.
Right.
And you can go to disaster sites and you'll see on the side of the road piles of donated clothes. Because really what you're doing is donating what you want to get rid of or what you think is helpful.
Yeah.
And you mean well, but you didn't go ask or find out, like, do you need this thing before I ship it? It's very prevalent in disasters.
Yeah, I mean, like most recently with the hurricane up in the mountains, in the Appalachian Mountains, I remember, like, people are trying to do a good thing, but donating all these, like old summer clothes, like we're getting ready to go into the winter time. Yeah. Like I don't need old board shorts and t-shirts and stuff, for example.
Yeah, and it seems so like harmless when you're doing it until you realize a lot of people are doing it, and now that's another thing that organization has to deal with.
That's a really interesting, like, I don't even like dichotomy, or like a really interesting way to think about it. I never really.
Yeah. We call it when helping hurts.
When helping hurts. No, I mean that makes total sense.
Yeah,
it makes total sense. Well, as we wrap up here, what is the easiest and best way for folks that are listening to help? How can we find you, donate? Like, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, tons of ways. So go to NourishNC.org. You can volunteer, you can donate, you can pack snack packs and breakfast kits in your office, your home, your church. We got a whole list of things you can do on there. We got a most wanted list for our food drive. Okay. So you donate things we actually can use rather than 10-pound cans of chickpeas that kids don't eat. So lots of ways to get involved here. We don't exist without people in this community going and doing those things. So NourishNC.org.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast, and thank you for all the work that you and your organization are doing.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Cheers.